So now we come to our final Upanishad for this course, the Muṇḍaka. Muṇḍaka, Anda. It's got two retroflexes. That's what the dot is underneath. That's a retroflex sound in Sanskrit. Muṇḍaka, which means, it can mean the shaven-headed one, or shaven. So that may be a pointer to that it's, ascetic text. I mean, the yogis, either they have dreadlocks or they shave their heads. Okay, one or the other. And the point being, you don't fuss around with your hair, trying to make yourself look cute and attractive, because you're an ascetic. You're trying to break your attachment to the body, because we're not this body. And so either you let the hair just grow and then you pile it up, put cow dung in, which actually cow dung has antiseptic properties. It keeps that bugs out of the hair. So the original dreadlocks would have been the ascetics. Or if that's too cumbersome, you can shave it, but you can't do anything in between. So you're not there in the forest with a hair blower and a hairstylist. That's not the yogic lifestyle. So Muṇḍaka, and it's more than any other Upanishad, it really does critique the Vedic ritualism, and I wanted us to get a sense of that in this course. So it starts off, in fact, in the second verse. Okay, so the Muṇḍaka chapter 1, second verse. The knowledge of Brahman, which Brahma taught him, Brahma being Hiranyagarbha, the creator, both the higher and the lower. So now you get the sense that the higher is the Vedanta, the teaching of the Atman, and the lower is this Vedic ritualism, which is only sort of gets you stuff in the material world. It doesn't give you ultimate release or liberation. Okay, so and then go down a bit in the third. Well, let's look at the little story. Shaunaka, a wealthy householder, once went up to Angiras in this prescribed manner, right, which means the student with firewood in hand. Why firewood? So perform the initiation, right? I've come to you as a student, so this is the prescribed manner. And asked, what is it, my lord, by knowing which a man comes to know this whole world, right? Typical sort of Upanishadic framing for a teaching, an Upanishadic teaching. This is what Angiras told him. Two types of knowledge a man should learn. Those who know Brahman tell us. The higher and the lower. The lower of the two consists of the Vedas. The Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, the Atharva Veda, phonetics, right? The 6 Angas that Hamilton discussed in the introduction. The 6, auxiliary limbs of the Vedas. Phonetics, here they are. How do you perform the ritual? Grammar, etymology, nirukta, metrics, and astronomy, Jyotish. That's the lower. Just, how to do the ritual, why you do ritual to get, perpetuate the material universe, get good things of life, and then maybe at best next life you get to a celestial realm, but you can't stay there. So it's material, it's not ultimate. Material meaning pertaining to your material body, mind, and material needs. Whereas the higher is that by which one grasps the imperishable, doesn't perish. The Atman doesn't perish. The Vedic ritual perishes. The fruits of the ritual perish. Which cannot be seen. What cannot be grasped? Without color, the Atman, right? Can't be seen, can't be grasped. Without color, without sight or hearing, without hands or feet. But what is eternal and all-pervading? This is the Atman. Extremely minute. Remember, take the hair and split it up into 10,000 parts. Extremely minute. Present everywhere. It's potentially infinite. This is the immutable which the wise fully perceive. Okay, always keep this in mind. The goal of this all is perception, direct perception of the Atman. By the Atman. The Atman perceives its own nature rather than being absorbed in external. It becomes conscious of itself. Now we're just conscious of the mind, our thoughts, and the sense world out there. Consciousness is not conscious of consciousness itself, which is the goal, as we'll see in yoga. As a spider spins out threads, we've had this metaphor before, then draws them into itself, as plants sprout out from the earth, as head and body hair grows from a living man, so from the imperishable, nice little metaphors, hair grows out the body, etc., all things spring forth. Okay, now how about this for a critique of Vedic ritualism? So go to the section 2, page 269, across the page there, down at the bottom, verse 6. So the idea is the rituals, desires are beckoning us, right? The rituals, if you have certain desires, you do a certain ritual to fulfill that desire. So look at this. Come, come, say the oblations, shining bright, as they carry their offerer on the sun's rays of light. They praise him, telling him flattering things. This is yours, this Brahman's world, built by good deeds and rites well done. Okay, it's being sarcastic. So the sacrifices, the texts are saying, okay, you want this, you do this right. You want a progeny, you do this other right. So the rituals are saying, come, 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 we'll satisfy all your desires. Okay, so it's just phrased so in such a lovely way. Okay, being sarcastic though. And then the author replies, surely they are floating unanchored, these 18 forms of the sacrifice, many different forms of sacrifice. The rites within which are called inferior. These rituals are inferior. And look at this strong language. The fools who hail that as the best return once more to old age and death. Gita says exactly the same thing. That the Muṇḍaka, that the fools are addicted to these kamatmana, svarga, para, janma karma pala pradam, kriya vishesha bahulam, bhogeshvarya prasaktaram. Fools who are attached to stuff and they want success in this world, so they do these rituals. Same here. The fools who hail that as the best, the fruits of ritual. But what happens? They may get the fruits. And by the way, they none of these texts ever say the sacrifices don't work. They never say. Neither Buddhism, which critiques the Brahmins and Brahmanism, and it critiques certain aspects of the Vedic culture, but it never comes out and says, the early Buddhist texts never say the rituals don't work. These rituals are performed for 2,000 years. And I in fact, I put a question out on we have a Religion in South Asia listserv, all Indologists, asking everybody in the whole world, right? They're professors and academics who are involved in the study of ancient India. If anyone knew of a single reference in any ancient text, not just Vedic, obviously the Brahmins are going to say the ritual works. Of course they are, because they're trying to perpetuate the ritual. But those that break away from the Vedic matrix and criticize, Brahmanism, criticize casteism. If anyone knew of a single reference where anybody said the ritual doesn't work, no one could produce a reference. So for well over a millennium, 2,000 years, the ritual was performed. And there's never any reference in any of these texts, that it didn't work. So somehow or other, even the criticism here is not that it doesn't work. The assumption is it does work, but it can only give you material gains, material fruits. So the fools who hail that as the best, to be foolish to think that material goods, material success in a ritual is going to give you any kind of deep level, eternal, ultimate truth. The fools who hail that as the best, they return once more to old age and death. Right? Even if they go to the celestial realm, it's temporary. They have to come back down and be reborn again. Wallowing in ignorance. Remember, whenever these texts talk about ignorance, they're talking about ignorance of the Atman. Right? Avidya is the word. You have to know that word. Avidya. Vidya is knowledge, to see, to perceive the Atman. Avidya is to think one is body-mind, rather than understanding I'm really something else. I'm really pure consciousness, I'm Atman. So wallowing in ignorance, but calling themselves wise. Why do they call themselves wise? Because they memorized all the Vedic hymns, they're Brahmins, they're learned, right? So they're all full of themselves. But calling themselves wise, thinking they are learned. They think they're learned just because they are Brahmins and have memorized all the ritualistic procedures and mantras and when to chant them and how to perform the ritual. So they think themselves learned. The fools go around, right, through getting reborn, maybe making it to the celestial realm and then back down again, hurting themselves badly, right, because they've, every time you get embodied, you're in a body which experiences pain, like a group of blind men led by a man who is himself blind. That's an old metaphor that we see all over the place. Wallowing in ignorance time and again. Tell us how you really feel. The fools imagine, we have reached our aim, we performed our rituals, we've got to the celestial realm. Because of their passion, right? Because they have desires. They have desires for worldly things. They do rituals for worldly things. And attaining the celestial realm is also a worldly goal. So, because of their passion, their desire, they do not understand These people who were given to rites, they're addicted to these rituals. Krishna says in the Gita, they're addicted. Therefore they fall, wretched and forlorn, when their heavenly stay comes to a close. Once the karma runs out, they make it to the celestial realm. They can only stay there for as long as their karmic bank account lasts, and then they come back down. Deeming sacrifices and gifts as the best. The imbeciles, oh my, so, well, don't understate it. Tell us how you really feel there. The imbeciles know nothing better. When they have enjoyed their good work atop the firmament, up in the celestial realm and highest, dimensions of the universe, subtle realms, right, not perceivable by gross senses or instrumentation, right? They're made of subtle matter, but nothing to do with liberation, right? When they have enjoyed their good work atop the firmament, up at the top of the universe, they return again to this abject world. But those in the wilderness, now we have the sadhus, the sages in the wilderness, the wild, right? They go there to renounce the world. So they want to go where there's no distracted, calm and wise, who live a life of penance and faith. As they beg their food, they renounced everything, so they beg a little food just to sustain the body. Through the sun's door they go, spotless, on their way to liberation, to where that immortal person is, the Atman. That immutable self, unlike the sacrifice, which is ever-changing, which Atman does not. When he perceives the worlds as built with rites, remember the Vedic sacrifice, I mean, it's not rejecting this, it's just saying that's not the goal of life. Remember, in the Vedic culture, you're perpetuating the universe by performance of Vedic sacrifice. When he perceives the worlds as built with rites, and even the celestial realm, it's built with that, and you attain that through the rites, a Brahmin should acquire a sense of disgust. What's made can't make what is unmade, right? So the rites are made, but they can't make what unmade means the immortal. That Atman is eternal; it's never been made. So the rite that you make, that can't give you something that's unmade, that's eternal. So therefore, a Brahmin, a real Brahmin, someone who goes beyond the superficial boons and benefits acquired from Vedic ritualism, realizes this. So then, to understand it, he must go firewood in hand. Remember that? When you approach a teacher, firewood in hand. So if you ever come to visit me in my office, if COVID-19 ever allows us back on campus, and you bring some fire. I actually had students once who brought me firewood. We had a Vedanta Sutra course, and really nice students. So they were half joking, half being respectful. They brought me some firewood because we were studying these texts. So to understand it, he must go firewood in hand to a teacher well versed in the Vedas and focused on Brahman, not on these temporary rites. To that student of tranquil mind and calm disposition, right? Tranquil, not full of desires for this, that, and the other, such as the ritualists are, calm, who had come to him in the right manner, humbly, and in a state of humility and seeking real knowledge, right? That learned man faithfully imparted the knowledge of Brahman. Okay? The teacher simply wants to see that the student is sincere and humble. Because if you're not humble, you can't listen, right? If you think you're arrogant and you think you know everything, so then how can the teacher? Then why go to a teacher? And how can a teacher communicate to someone who's arrogant? So humility and sincerity. But so the knowledge of Brahman, by which he understood that person, the Purusha. This is another term for the Atman. Okay, Purusha. The true, the imperishable. So then, chapter 2, we'll just read the first couple of verses. As from a well-stoked fire, sparks fly by the thousands, all looking just like it. Okay, so the sparks, they have all the qualities of the fire. So from the imperishable issue diverse things. All these things come from Brahman. And into it, my friend, they return. Everything goes back into Brahman. That person indeed is divine. He has no visible form. He is both within and without. He's the Atman and he's everything. Unborn, without breath or mind. He is radiant and further than the furthest imperishable. So we'll go down to 5. From him comes the fire, whose firewood is the sun. From the moon comes rain. Plants grow upon earth. actually, let's skip and we'll go over to verse 9. From him spring all oceans and hills. The Gita, Krishna's going to say, it's going to have a couple of chapters like this. I am everything. I am the mighty, I am might. Of mountains, I am Meru. From him spring all oceans and hills. From him flow rivers of all types. From him spring all plants, and the sap by which he abides in things is their innermost self. All this is simply that person, right? Sarvamidam Kalu Brahman. Right? For Vedantins, everything is Brahman. Everything emanates from Brahman. Shankara, of course, what emanates is actually illusory. Ramanuja, no, it's real. All this is simply that person, rites, penance, prayer, the highest immortal. One who knows is my friend, hidden within the cave. Remember the cave, it's the heart where the Atman resides. Cuts the knot of ignorance in this world. Okay, we'll go to part 2, which is smaller than the smallest and intensely bright, in which rest these worlds and those who live therein. So sometimes it's described as the smallest of the smallest, or it's the infinite support of everything, right? Because it's both. It is the imperishable Brahman. It is breath. It is the immortal. It is what we must strike, my friend. Now we get a metaphor. Take, my friend, this bow, this great weapon of Upanishad. The Upanishad's the bow. Place veneration on it as the whetted arrow. Stretch it with the thought fixed on the nature of that. That very imperishable is the target, my friend. Strike it. So the Upanishad's the bow. That allows us veneration. We respect it. We venerate it, and then that bow takes us, hits the target of Brahman. The Upanishads are going to take us to Brahman. In other words, they are the vehicle to get us to Brahman. And then he changes the metaphor a bit. The bow is Om. The arrow is the self. The target is Brahman. They say one must strike that undistracted. He will then be lodged in that like the arrow in the target. Then the Atman somehow unites with Brahman. Now, whether that's a unity as Shankara would have it, monistic, or a unity of two in love and devotion as Ramanuja, the monotheist, would have it, of course, it can go either way. That alone is the self you must understand, on which are woven the earth, intermediate region and the sky. Everything is woven on Brahman. The mind, together with all breaths, put away other words, for this is the dike to the immortal. Don't talk about other stuff. Don't waste your mind and breath on other things. Seek Brahman. So let's go jump down to 8 8. When one sees him, both the high and the low, the knot of one's heart is cut. What is the knot? Desire. That's the knot that binds us to the world. That's cut. All doubts are dispelled when you perceive the truth. Till then, it's just faith. Naturally, there will be doubts. But all doubts are dispelled when we see that Gita's going to say the same thing. That one can, perform tapas, do practices, but yet there is still desire, there's still attachment in the mind, and then only when one sees the truth, one is really free of desire and also of doubt. So all doubts are dispelled and his works come to an end. That's the goal. In that high golden container is Brahman. Stainless and partless, right? No, it's pure. And it has no parts. Obviously, if it has parts, you could pull them aside and pull the parts apart, and it wouldn't be eternal. And if something has parts, then by definition, the parts are separable. The original entity ceases to be if you separate the parts. So something that's eternal can have no parts. So stainless and partless, the brilliant light of lights. This is what they know. Those who know the self, they know the Atman. There, the sun does not shine; it's effulgent. It doesn't need any external source of illumination, nor the moon and the stars, etc. Then we have chapter 3, the two birds, remember from the Shveta, so teachings are repeated. Two birds, companions and friends, nestle on the very same tree. One of them eats a tasty fig, the other not eating looks on. So we are here, so the soul is trying to enjoy the world, and God is waiting for the soul to turn to it, according to Ramanuja's interpretation, the monotheistic one. And the monistic one would be, it's the same bird. One is in ignorance, and the other bird is the one in enlightened one, but they're the same. Remember, Shankara, there's no dualism between God and soul. So let's go up to, we're in chapter 3 on page 275. We'll look at verse 5. We'll read a few more, and we'll just pick a few verses. Let's look at chapter 3, verse 5. By truth can this self be grasped. By austerity, this is tapas. It's going to be the first word in the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras, the chapter on practice. What do you do if you want to attain Brahman? Well, first thing, you have to control the desires. And what is that? That's austerity. Austerity means to say no, right? To sort of control the desires of the mind. So by truth, by austerity, by right knowledge, right, which the Upanishads present themselves as delivering to us, by right knowledge, and by a perpetually chaste life, celibate life, brahmacharya. It lies within the body, brilliant and full of light, which ascetics perceive. Can be perceived. Atman can be perceived, pure consciousness, always compared as a luminous, effulgent, blissful entity. But they perceive when their faults are wiped out. Jump a verse to 7. It is large, heavenly, of inconceivable form, yet it appears more minute than the minute. So it's something there's no correlate to it in our material world of sense objects. So it's contradictory, it's amazing. So these are just words to indicate that it's something completely different from anything we've ever experienced. So it's large, heavenly, of inconceivable form, yet it appears more minute than the minute. It's further than the furthest, yet it is here at hand. So it's right within us, and yet, it's also everything. It is right here within those who see, hidden within the cave of their heart. And we know what the cave is. Not by sight, not by speech, nor by any other sense, nor by austerities or rites is he grasped. Although before it said it was austerities. Of course, austerities can calm the mind, but you can't grasp it with austerities. Austerities are preparatory. Rather, the partless one, another name for the Atman, he has no part. So the partless one is seen by a man or woman as he or she meditates, when his being has become pure, when the mind it's purified from all the desires and ignorance and illusions. And we have to purify the mind. All traditions accept this. Okay, there's a method and a practice if one wants to perceive the innermost self through the lucidity of knowledge. Let's jump down to the bottom, last verse, section 2, we're in chapter 3, section 2, verse 2. One who hankers after desires in his thoughts is born here and there through his actions, right? If we just live a life pursuing our desires and then we act according to those desires, then we create karma, and then according to that karma, we get the results. We're born here or there, based on whatever karma we created for ourselves. So one who hankers after desires in his thoughts is born here and there through his actions. But when one's desires are fulfilled and one's self is made perfect, all his desires disappear in this very world. Okay, so when we attain the Atman, all desires are fulfilled. There are no more desires. That is the ultimate desire. Verse 3, this self cannot be grasped by teachings or by intelligence. We can learn about it. We can't experience it through intelligence. Intelligence can know about it and aspire to seek it, but can't grasp it. Or even by great learning. I mean, learning is just what? Learning about it. That's not the same as experiencing it. Only the man he chooses can grasp him, whose body this self chooses as his own. Right? The Atman can only know itself, essentially. This self cannot be grasped by a weak man, or through carelessness, or even by austerity without the marks of an ascetic. Shaven head, dreadlocks, whatever, loincloth. But when a wise man strides by these means, the self enters his Brahman abode. Jump to 6. The ascetics, right? Those who have renounced the world, who have firmly determined their goal through a full knowledge of the Vedanta. Right? They've understood their goal from where? How do they understand it? From the Upanishads, from the teachers. Right? The knowledge has to come from the outside. If one's going to seek the Atman, how does one know about the Atman? That knowledge of Atman doesn't just self-manifest in the mind. We have to hear about it from the outside. It has to be given, like any knowledge. Right? You want to learn a subject, you have to learn it from a teacher or from books, from some words from the outside. So through a full knowledge of the Vedanta, have their being purified by the discipline of renunciation. So this is the practice In order to, this is the price tag. If you want to know the Atman, then we have to renounce all other desires. This is to be exclusively devoted to the Atman. So, in the worlds of Brahman, at the time of the final end, having become fully immortal, they will all be fully liberated. If we give up these desires, then that's the destination. And so here and then the verse 8, similar to the Chandogya verses, remember those, the rivers merging into the ocean. As the rivers flow on and enter into the ocean, giving up their names and appearances, right? Right now we think we're male, female, we think we're from this country, that country, we have this name, that name. All of that is just temporary, ultimately illusory from the point of view of the Atman. So giving all that up. So the knower, freed from name and appearance, right? Names, identities, appearance, shapes, forms, reaches the heavenly person with a capital P, the Atman, beyond the very highest. Okay, so that's, and the verse ends up, one second. Just wanted to get the Sanskrit there. So last verse, let's see how it finishes up. Who are versed in the Vedas and perform rites. So some of the Upanishadic sages were still performing their Vedic rites, but they were just doing them as dharma. They weren't seeking desires anymore. So some of these Atman seekers were still performing their Brahman rites. And here's a even this Upanishads, which was dismissive of them earlier in the first part of the Upanishads, here, seems to be accepting them. Who are versed in the Vedas and perform rites, but who are grounded in Brahman, not just doing rites for the sake of ephemeral things. Doing rites, maybe, to perpetuate the universe, or just because it's their duty as Brahmins to do that, but no longer doing that from a place of desire. Who are grounded in Brahman, who are actual knowers of Atman, who offer for themselves with faith in the lone seer. They dedicated themselves, they're offering themselves alone, right? The Atman is autonomous. To these alone let a man teach this knowledge of Brahman. So the one who has knowledge should teach somebody who's grounded in Brahman, who have dedicated themselves, who are seeking that, and maybe still doing, Brahmins actually. It's kind of saying you should teach it to Brahmins, those who are versed in the Vedas and perform rites. That's one way of reading this verse. So to these alone let a man teach this knowledge of Brahman, so long as they have duly performed the head vow. As long as they've shaved their heads and renounced the world and are serious about this, then that such a person is a worthy student. And that's it. Homage to the highest seers, homage to the highest seers. Namaha Paramarishibhyo, Namaha Paramarishibhyo. Sorry, Rishibhyaha is how it ends. Okay? So that's it for the Upanishads, and the next lecture will be on the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta is coming out of this tradition now, and wants to systematize it and essentially argue that the entire Upanishads are about nothing other than Brahman. So we'll turn our attention to that next. Hope you enjoyed the Upanishads. I love to read them.